Welcome back to Private Conversations with Pastor Tare. I'm here with Pastor Tare Horn, and we are talking about the sermon from this past Sunday. And you talked about the wheat and the tares. We're talking about the wheat and the tares and producing fruit. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. And I thought it was really interesting what you said about the tares. So we'll save that for later once we get into it. But there was just so much to talk about. Yeah. And actually, I went to a birthday party after church, and I was sitting at a table with several people, and everybody wanted to talk about the sermon from Sunday. They thought it was so interesting.
I heard about that.
Yeah, I'm sure you
Somebody
did.
was telling me about some questions that people had, especially about the one about the mustard.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it provoked some conversations.
Yeah,
and
right.
People need to be talking about the Word and discussing it, and so it's good that it provokes people a little bit. So
everybody just thought it was so interesting, and it did just provoke a lot of questions. So it was really, really good, really rich. But I want to ask you some questions. This is something that you talked a lot about on Sunday. You talked about separating yourself from the tares and even soul ties and things like that. So you said something really interesting that I think is important for us to understand, which is don't try to uproot the tare.
Yes.
Jesus gave the parable of the wheat and the tares, where a person planted a garden, they planted wheat in their field, and then while men were sleeping, an enemy went in and planted the tares, right? Yeah. And so you said not to try to uproot the tare, but to separate yourself from it. So what do you tell someone when the tare might be their spouse or a sibling or maybe even their best friend, right?
Yeah.
How do you handle that, and how do you separate from a tare without blowing up everything around you? Because I think that can be
Well, I think it's two parts, at least two parts to it. And when Jesus was talking about the tares, he said, don't pull the tares up, because if you do, you'll uproot some of the wheat.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that the roots of the tare go down deep, and they go and intermingle with the roots of the tare, or roots of the wheat, I'm sorry. And so if you pull the tare out of the ground, then you'll pull the wheat with it. So he said, let them both grow together, and at the time of the harvest, which the harvest is the end of the age, he said, I'm going to send my angels, and they're going to separate first the tares. So this is really talking more about the end time than it is about maybe just your normal everyday life. But if you want to go into that part of it, what do I do when I'm surrounded by tares? And maybe, what if I'm a tare myself? That would be bad. But typically, I know how it is when, or how it was when I first came to the Lord. All my friends were in the world. And so when I got saved, I didn't have to worry about separating from anyone. They separated from me. And so I think if you really are the wheat, if you're really truly born again and you're really bearing fruit and serving the Lord, that you don't have to worry about the separation. It's going to come. People are not going. If they're not the people of God, they don't want to be around you. So I pretty well lost every friend I had.
Yeah.
So, if you're friends of the world, you're an enemy of God. So if you're still, your major friends, your major associations are in the world system, then probably means you're not wheat. So I think in general, that separation will happen if you're really serving the Lord. Wow. And then I think the question was, what if it's your spouse? Well, obviously, God doesn't approve divorce, and Scripture says that if you have an unbelieving spouse, that if they want to live with you, you don't send them away. So you still stay together, And
that's
then,
1 Corinthians 7, right?
Yeah, and so God has, He has an answer for every one of these situations. Sometimes we can't.
Yeah.
We don't always know what it is, but it's in the Word, and we have to seek it out. So I don't think it's so much of separating from the tares. In general, they will separate from you. And then in the last days, he says, I'm going to send the angels, which the word angel means messenger. And there's going to be messages and messengers out there. They're going to be speaking, and people that are not the real people of God, they're going to follow the false message, and they're going to automatically begin to gather together and collect together. And then the other part of it in 2 Corinthians, Paul says, don't be bound together with unbelievers. So there is a command to us that not to be with people that are not really seeking the Lord, you know?
Yeah.
And he says, you know, you can't eat off the table of the Lord and the table of demons, you know? You can't, what fellowship does light have with darkness? So, you know, the longer you work with walk with the Lord, the more you seek the Lord, the closer you get to the Lord, the fewer your friends are. And so in general, you're going to just end up with people that have the same mind that you have. And, you know, you're going to be you can't walk together unless you're in agreement. So if you really live for God, a lot of that's going to take care of itself. And people will separate from you.
That's interesting.
And then there might be some cases where you just have to pull out from maybe associations or relationships because they're not healthy. Doesn't mean that you're better than anybody else, but you don't want to be, you know, defiled by the system, the world system, and the demonic. So, but it is a good question, you know.
Well, it's something you've actually taught me for years is, you know, don't focus on not doing the negative. Replace that with the positive. And so, you know, I think it's 1 Timothy says, pursue love, peace, righteousness, and faith with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. So it's really seeking out people around you who do have a pure heart and just connect to them.
And, you know, if you follow the Lord and you follow His ways, then the people that are doing that, they'll follow with you, you know. And but obviously he's talking about in the world, also even in church, you know, there are people that, you know, are maybe not really believers, you know, and you're going to run into that. That's going to happen. And, you know, God's the one that knows what that is. And but for us as believers, you know, how do you know somebody's a wheat? Or how do you know they're a tare? And the key thing there is the fruit production. That's the key. And even with false prophets.
So tell us about that, because
that's a really deep subject. And
so what's the difference? What's the core difference between wheat and tares? Because on the surface they kind of look the same, right?
Cosmetically,
exactly.
They look the same, and you know, you wouldn't know the difference until it comes time for fruit production. And Jesus is very clear about producing fruit. All the parables that we were talking about has to do with either producing the fruit or the war against producing the fruit. In the parable of the sower and the seed, only one of the soils produced fruit. And he specifically said they produce fruit. So fruit is what God is looking for. So wheat produces fruit, tares don't. And so what is, I guess the next question is, what is the fruit? And there's a lot of different things, if you go through scripture, that is connected to fruit. Just some of the scriptures in Proverbs. Proverbs 18:20 says, with the fruit of a man's mouth, his stomach will be satisfied. So in the case of the sower and the seed, the wheat and the tares, everything starts with the seed. And so in the case of the sower and the seed, the word of God is the seed. So words are seeds. Satan has seeds. God has seeds. And words come out of your mouth. So what comes out of your mouth are seeds also.
By the fruit of the mouth, one will be satisfied.
Absolutely. And so many times when we're talking about fruit, we can be talking about what comes out of our mouth. And what comes out of our mouth is from what's in the heart. And so God looks at the heart, and we know the heart is the soil. So if you connect all the dots here with the sower and the seed is in the heart, and it comes out of the mouth. So the same seed that's in the heart is going to come out of the mouth in form of words, and those words will produce fruit, either bad fruit or good fruit. So what is the fruit? The fruit is listen to the words. You know, listen to is it love, is it joy, is it peace, is it the fruit of the Spirit, or is it bitterness, anger, unforgiveness, and that sort of thing. So every time you speak, you're sowing seed. And those seeds are going to produce fruit, and you're going to eat the words that you speak. And you're going to be satisfied with that. So, you know, if you're speaking evil words, and you're going to produce evil fruit. And the reason is because the heart's not right. Same as the sower and the seed. So if you get the heart right, the seed's going to come in, it's going to produce the right fruit that's going to come out of your mouth. So one way of looking at fruit is, what are the words that come out of my mouth? Are they producing life or death? It says the power of life and death is in the tongue. So again, fruit is the word. It says the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life.
Yeah.
So righteousness, are you producing righteousness? Because that's going to produce the fruit of righteousness. And so righteousness is another way of looking at, am I producing fruit? Am I wheat or a tare? Am I walking in righteousness? And 1 John it says, don't be deceived, the one who practices righteousness is righteous. So are you doing the right thing? Are you producing good deeds in faith? You can go through, there's a lot of scripture on that. I won't go into all of that. But it says also, with the fruit of a man's mouth, he enjoys good. So, what comes out of your mouth is going to produce good things in your life. It's going to produce bad things. Another way of knowing, am I wheat or am I a tare? In Hebrews 12:11, it says, all discipline for the moment is not joyful, but sorrowful. But afterwards, those who have been trained by it, it yields a peaceful fruit of righteousness.
Wow.
So, do you receive discipline?
Yeah.
When you're corrected by the Lord, or you're corrected by someone that has an authority that God's placed in your life, do you receive the discipline? Do you receive the correction?
Yeah.
Well, if you're a legitimate child, he says, if you're without discipline, you're illegitimate. So this is another way to know, am I really a child of God? Do I receive the discipline when it comes? And if you do, it says those who are trained by it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness.
Yeah.
And the fruit of righteousness is the fruit of the Spirit, the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So, and also peace. Do you have peace in your life? The kingdom of God is not eating and drinking, but righteousness, there it is again, peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. So, are you walking in peace all the time?
Wow.
Or most of the time anyway. And so if you receive discipline, it's going to yield the fruit of righteousness.
Wow. For pastors and leaders who might be watching this podcast, would you say that is a key way for them to discern the wheat and the tares in their congregation, is whether or not people receive the discipline or receive correction?
Yeah, and the scripture is very clear that if you're without discipline, you're illegitimate.
Yeah.
And you're not a son, you're not a daughter. So, and whom the Father loves, he disciplines. So if you receive discipline, and if you know the Lord is disciplining you, that shows you that you are his child. And whom the Lord loves, he disciplines. So discipline is really a key in knowing whether you're a child of God or not,
Yeah.
So some people think they are, but they're really not. And it's pretty sad to maybe one day stand before the Lord and you're saying, let me in. And he goes, I don't even know who you are, So we need to know, he says, make your calling and election sure, that he's really chosen you. So these are just some of the things, producing fruit and what comes out of your mouth. It says, keeping away from strife is an honor for a man. Any fool will quarrel. Well, a fool is not the wise virgin.
Yeah.
So, you can go through scripture and you can look up everything about foolishness. And if that's you, then you got a problem,
It's scary.
And then in James, it says the seed whose fruit is righteousness. So the seed of the Word of God, the fruit of it is righteousness. So if righteousness is not entering into your life, then you got a problem.
And I think too, it says the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. And so if you don't have peace in your life, that's a kind of a sign a lot of times that I'm not walking.
Something's not right.
Yeah.
And it says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they'll be called the sons of God, Yeah. So peace is really important. And as a real child of God, when you're in situations, or if you're counseling, or if you're in relationships, the idea should be always to bring peace, if possible. He said, live with peace with all men as much as possible within you. So righteousness. Are you walking in righteousness? And so that is the fruit that we're looking for, number one. And then you'll know it by the fruit that comes out of the mouth. He said, even the false prophets.
Yeah.
You don't gather figs from thorn bushes.
Yeah.
And so he talks a lot about that,
Well, and another thing I think that's so important, Jesus said, like you said, you'll know them by their fruits, and the difference between the true and the false. But if you don't know the Word, and if you haven't studied the Word, how are you going to be able to discern the words coming out of someone else's mouth?
And this is the key, I think, for most believers. I've just run into so many people that really don't know the Word. They only know what maybe the pastor's taught them or what they've heard somebody. They haven't really studied the Word, learned the Word, got it in their heart, meditated on it, and actually practiced it. John 15 is a really, really important chapter about fruit bearing, about who the real people of God are. And Jesus says that I'm the true vine and the Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me. So this is interesting. These branches are in the Lord. So you can be in the Lord and you can be in the vine, but still not producing fruit. And this is where I think people are deceived in thinking, well, I'm in the Lord and blah, blah, blah. But this is what he says. He says, every branch in me that doesn't bear fruit, he takes away. So fruit production is not optional.
Yeah.
It's not optional. And he says, you can be in me, but not produce fruit. And that's just like the sowing the seed. The seed was in there, but it didn't produce fruit, and it got choked out. And it's not the Lord's.
Yeah. Do you think, well, here's kind of a loaded question. Do you think that Judas was a tare? And well, if you think about Judas, I mean, he probably cast out demons.
Yes,
I mean, he went out and preached the gospel.
Says they did.
He probably healed the sick.
Absolutely.
But
in the end, he betrayed the Lord.
Yeah.
And in the end, he loved the money more, and obviously, for some reason, he was convinced that Jesus either wasn't the real deal.
Yeah.
Maybe Jesus didn't do it the way he wanted it to. It's hard to say why he went down the wrong road. But those disciples all went out and cast out demons, and I'm sure that he did.
Yeah.
So that by itself is not enough to say I'm producing fruit.
Right.
You can I mean, I've been doing that for 30 years, but that's not what I base my salvation on, the fact that we do deliverance,
Right.
So when you go in here, he says, if you bear fruit, then what he does, he prunes it. So there's the disciplining, there's the cleansing that God does. So that's a work that the Holy Spirit does in you, the work of sanctification. So there's a pruning, there's a disciplining of God's true branches. And then he says, you're clean because of the word I spoke. Clean means pruning, the same thing as pruning.
Right.
And so the real wheat, the real people of God are going to receive the word. They're going to let it prune them. They're going to let it discipline them. They're going to let it speak to their life. And let me go on a few more scriptures here. And then, so the question is, one of the questions is, how do I produce fruit?
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge.
I mean, what do I do? He says, abide in me, and I in you. The branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine.
Yeah.
So the question is, what does that mean?
Yeah, a lot of people hear that and they think, okay, abiding means I sit in the morning for an hour and just soak or something, and listen
or
to
I go to church,
peaceful music,
or I pray, and I read the word once a month, or something like that.
What does that mean?
And then so you have to. This is what people need to understand. The Bible will define itself. So this is the way I study the Bible. So I go, okay, what does it mean to abide? So if you're really a disciple, you're going to ask the Lord, what does that mean? So you can go to 1 John 3:24. One who keeps his commandments abides in him. So you cannot produce fruit unless you abide in the Lord. So you cannot abide in the Lord unless you keep his word. It's simple.
Just obedience.
It's obedience to the word.
Yeah.
Which word? Everything he says.
Yeah.
So you're not going to produce fruit unless you abide in the Lord, and you can't abide in the Lord unless you obey his words, And he says, by this we know he abides in us by the Spirit. Also he says, he who eats my flesh. Well, what's his flesh? His flesh is the word. The blood is the Spirit. He who eats my flesh and drinks my spirit abides in me. So there's another scripture on how to abide in the Lord, and abiding in the Lord is how you produce fruit. So do you obey the Lord? That's righteousness, It's by faith, but by faith you do the works of righteousness. And faith without works is dead. So you don't produce fruit without works. No. And then he said, if verse 5, he says in John 15, I'm the vine. If you abide in me, you're going to bear much fruit. And apart from me, you can do nothing. So what does it mean to be apart from Jesus? Well, you can't be part of him unless you do what he says. That's how you get to be part of the Lord. And that's how you abide in him. And that's how he abides in you.
Wow.
So anyone that teaches you that you don't have to do what he says is a lie. It's false.
Yeah.
It's leaven in the flour.
Wow.